How My Cousin's Parents Met, retold by Diana Benitez. My parents didn't talk much about their relationship, or their love for one another, or how they met. To tell you the truth, they weren't a happy couple. In fact, they didn't talk much about anything to each other. They made sure for years that they had work schedules that conflicted and kept them out of the house when the other one was home. The only time they would really see each other was on the weekends and holidays, and you could always expect a serious fight or argument. It was a hell of a marriage. They went at it whenever they got together, even on Sunday mornings, even on Christmas Day. It got so bad at times that when I was a kid, my sister and I would plead with them to get a divorce. It went on like this year after year after year. What finally stopped them from arguing was the death of my dad in 1997. But I knew the bare bones of how they met. It was during World War II, and sometimes, if my mom wasn't around and my dad had had a few drinks, he'd start talking about the war, the stuff he saw, the life he led. He'd talk about how he'd been a Polish farm boy when he was captured by the Nazis and taken to Buchenwald camp as a slave laborer. He spent more than 4 years there doing the work that the Nazis needed done because their own farm boys were out conquering the world. My dad would talk about the work and the hunger, and once in a while he would talk about my mom. One of the stories he told me was about the day he was captured by the Nazis. They came to her house and killed her mom and my aunt's baby, kicked it to death. My mom was able to save herself by breaking through a window and escaping into a forest. That's where the Nazis caught her the next day. They shipped her and a bunch of other girls from her village off to the slave labor camps in Germany. When she got to the camp a week later, she was crying so much that one of the guards said if she didn't stop crying, he would shoot her. My dad liked to tell the story about how she was captured and how brave and strong she was when she saw the terrible things that happened to her family. And sometimes he would tell me about when she was freed. It happened near the end of the war, when he and some other slave laborers from Buchenwald were being led on a death march. My dad and these other guys were passing the camp where my mom was. That's when my dad first met her. And that's also pretty much where my dad's story about what happened split with my mom's story. The way my dad told it, the guards were prodding the prisoners on this death march, came up to the camp where my mom was, and found all the Nazi guards gone. It had been deserted by the men who were supposed to watch it. According to my dad, every Nazi in Germany was trying to put as much distance between themselves and the 10 million or so invading Russians. There were no guards in my mom's camp because they had fled before the Reds that were barreling down on Germany. When the Germans who were watching my dad's camp realized this, they too split, leaving my dad and the other prisoners in front of my mom's camp. Telling this story, my dad would always throw in at this point the fact that he had been a prisoner for 4.5 years, and that they were hard years. He had seen his friends beaten, hanged, starved to death, and castrated. The German guards controlling his concentration camp never extended a human touch towards the prisoners, as far as my dad could tell, and he figured it was the same for women. They had seen their mothers raped, their sisters bayoneted, babies thrown up in the air and shot. When my dad and the other men saw those women standing at the camp gate with their hands on the barbed wire looking at them, you can imagine what they thought. What all of them thought. My dad liked to say that the meeting between the men slaves and the women slaves, first we had something to eat, and then we got married. But, he liked to assure me, he was always a gentleman. That's the way my dad told it, and that's the way I understood it for years, until after my dad died, and I asked my mom what she remembered of that day that she met Dad. I asked her because I was writing a series of poems about them, and I wanted to write about the day they met. When I asked her, she said, "Sure, I'll tell you. Take out a writing pad." She was always doing that, asking me to write things down. If she knew she thought she was going to tell me that she wanted me to put in the book that she believed I was writing. So I reached for my bag and took out the pad and sat back to listen. She told me that she first saw my dad in front of the barracks building she was in. He was walking with a dozen other prisoners, a German soldier behind them, prodding them on with some kind of rifle. He was skinny then, like two shoelaces tied together. 70 pounds, she said, and he had only one eye. He lost the other when a guard clubbed him because he begged for food. She wasn't such a prize after 3 years in the camps either, she said. When the Americans liberated the camp she was in, they put her on a scale, and they found that she weighed less than 100 pounds. She was wearing woolens on her legs, a gray rag to hide her hair, and a dirty striped dress. And him? Your father? Like I said, skinny, a shoelace, with a bleeding towel across his face from where he lost his eye. Still, he walked up to me, took my hand, and in Polish he said, "Proszę pani." Yes, that's what he said. "Please, miss." And like a proper gentleman, he clicked his heels. I thought he was at least a count, maybe a prince. Then, just before your dad had a chance to kiss my hand, the German behind him kicked him in the pants and said, "Dummkopf raus." Get moving, dummy. Your father was always like that, putting on airs, even there in the camp, talking of Polish honor as if he and Poland shared a soul. Really, he was worthless. I wish I had left him in the camp right there. He couldn't drive a car. He couldn't fix a leaky roof. After the war, when I asked him in the refugee camp to come help me pack to come to America, and what do you think? He took a little drink and bundled all the clothes together in a bedspread, like America was across the street. The fool! I should have kicked him like that German soldier did when I first met him. Instead, I kissed him and wept. You're probably wondering whose story was the true story about that first meeting, my mom's or my dad's. And they both sounded true. I could see it in their eyes, the way they looked at me when they told me about that meeting at the camp gate, separated by barbed wire. My cousin's book will be finished soon, and we'll all find out which version she believes.